Psychology, misbehaviorists. Psychology, misbehaviorists.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of the MisBehaviourists with me, your host, Ben O'Loughlin, and my esteemed co-host, Dr. John Hyland. John, how are you?
Hey Ben, how are you getting on over there?
I'm very well. I'm keeping very well. I'm here in Amsterdam. Sunny
Very
Amsterdam,
nice.
actually. Sunny Amsterdam.
Can't say the same for here, to be honest now. Last night, the rain was torrential. It was, oh my God, it just lashed. It
So
was mad.
I love the way two Irish people start chatting and they're straight into the weather.
Yep. Be prepared, people. A lot of weather discussion. Yeah, it just lashed overnight. Now it did. And no, it's not raining at the moment, but my God, we had heard a few days ago we had to watch our water usage. There was there was a kind of a suggested cap put on water usage.
Because it rains too much.
No, because we weren't getting enough, I think. So we were
Oh,
actually
really? So we're
yeah,
owed,
because
we're owed it. Yeah.
yeah, because the weather has been really good over here the last few weeks. So they were kind of saying, we need a lot of rain for us to be able to have enough kind of surplus.
Sure.
But to be honest, it rained so much last night. I'd say they got,
You're
hopefully
delighted.
they got a bit of success. Yeah.
We'd have
The
enough to
powers
drink.
that be over water usage and
Irish water.
management.
They've
Yeah.
had enough troubles over the years.
Yeah, the rain is kind of helping them out in this case.
I've always found it funny though. Actually, let's talk about psychology while we're here, because we're going into a chat about Irish water. So to inform our massive following what we're here to do and what we're here to talk about.
How the Perry is.
Yeah. So to give maybe John, you'll give a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. You're the expert, I suppose, in behavioral science.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about this episode, or do you want me to talk a little bit about kind of the general themes?
Well, let's go. Well, maybe let's start with us, and then see
Yeah,
how we came to here, and then we can go into behavioral science a bit later on.
Cool. That sounds good. So, hi everybody. I'm John Hyland, and my background is psychology primarily. So I did my undergrad in psychology back in the day, and then just after that, then I went on. I did a master's in cognitive science, and just following that, then I did a PhD in the experimental analysis of behavior. So very kind of behavioral focused PhD. And then since I graduated, then I took up a lecturing position, and I've been kind of in the area of academia ever since, really.
Cool.
So this is a nice welcome break from publication, manuscript writing and teaching, and actually doing something a bit more audio visual online. So how about yourself?
Well, I've a mix. I'm a mixed bag, I would say.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah. So for those listening, John was my supervisor for my bachelor's thesis.
Yeah.
In I don't know how long ago. Well, it was psychology. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was trying to remember.
Yeah,
What did I do that in again? It was general psychology, and I'd say that was about 8 years ago. Was it? That makes
I'd
sense?
say so, give or take. I think I suppose the thesis part might have been a little bit less, because that would have been in your
Sure.
final year.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'd
sure,
say
yeah.
kind of maybe starting the course was 2011, 2012 maybe.
Yeah. So yeah,
like
so I think it was something like that. So maybe we started in
Yeah.
2012 and finished in
Yeah.
2015, 16. Yeah, so I'm a bit of a mixed bag. So for the first half of my life, I was a musician. Well, I still am a musician, but I put a lot of time into that. And then I was working in restaurants and stuff. And then I kind of, wanted to change my career path. So about 8 or 9 years ago, I think I decided to go back and study psychology. So I did that for 4 years. John, as I said, was one of my lecturers. Then I took a keen interest in behavioral economics and economic psychology and consumer psychology. It's like the where economics and psychology kind of intersect, and decision making around money and buying behavior, and a lot of not just that, but it's a lot of it is how we make irrational decisions, how our decision making is heavily influenced by our emotional brain rather than our rational brain. And you'd think, like, I think standard economics says that people are selfish and only out for themselves, but you see in all these kind of game theory and different economic games that's not the case. So it's really it's super interesting, and how you can apply that to. You can apply it everywhere, like not just in sales stuff, but in your own personal life, and how to approach the world better and to make better decisions yourselves. So that's what I kind of got really interested in. And then after that, I worked for a startup so my master's, I should have said, was in the Netherlands. I moved to the Netherlands, Tilburg in the south. And I spent a year there doing the master's. After that, I moved to Rotterdam, and I worked for a startup first in a sharing economy startup. And then I worked for a marketing agency where I learned all about the ins and outs of the marketing industry. And like, obviously psychology and marketing are somewhat tied together.
Yeah.
Well, marketing basically is underpinned by psychology.
Yeah.
And then I was there for 2 years, and then I started my own business, kind of copywriting and doing research for clients. And I'm based in Amsterdam now, and that's what I'm doing now. And it's going really well so far. COVID obviously took a bit of a hit, but
Of course.
same for everybody, you know.
So tell me this: did you move to Rotterdam because of the Beautiful South song? Or
That was the primary reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a feeling it probably.
Yeah, the beautiful city and the job opportunity were just kind of second.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I thought that. Actually, just kind of going back to Ben did a wonderful undergraduate study where he looked at anchoring, and I suppose that was kind of would that have been your first venture into kind of your own behavioral economic type research?
Absolutely, yeah. My first interest in it was in first year, actually. I think it was first or second year in the degree. One of my lecturers, so one of your colleagues, gave us a very short paper on, I think it was cheating behavior, it was unethical behavior, and how different, seemingly irrelevant variables had an impact on people's unethical behavior. For example, it was something, I can't remember the specifics, but it was something along the lines of different groups had to do mathematical tasks or something like that, and they had, for argument's sake, let's say they had half an hour to do it, but it was only, and there was 20 questions, but it was only possible, physically, cognitively, whatever, possible to finish 10 questions in the time. So, and they had a scoring system, different scoring systems that people could grade themselves and pay themselves out of money. So essentially that you could go, hang on a second, I can just pay myself fully. I can give myself all the money and not do any of the questions. So the first one was like, everyone sat down, and then like after like ridiculous amount, after 2 minutes, somebody put their hand up and go, what do I do when I'm finished all the questions? And the instructor goes, oh, you just come up. And then there was all stuff, they shredded the paper in front of everyone so they knew that their answers couldn't be seen. But there was like weird stuff, like if the person that said who's clearly stated that they were cheating, if they were wearing a different college jersey than the other people, cheating decreased, but if they were wearing the same, it increased. So it was like, your man he's from UCD, he's cheating, we're from Trinity, we don't do that. But if he's like, oh look, your man from Trinity is cheating, we'll do it as well. That kind of,
yeah.
that was one aspect of it. Now I can't remember all of the specific treatments and different details, but it really got me really interested in that kind of behavioral economics. It was a paper by Dan Ariely.
Oh yeah.
Who, if anyone who's not familiar with this topic, there's a super book called, I can't remember what it's called, predictably irrational, I think it's called. For years I called it irrational predictability or something like that, and then I realized I was wrong. So that was, and now I can never remember what it's called. But it's a really good read for a couple of reasons. It really introduces those concepts really simply.
Yeah,
like really easy to read language, and like, because I think when it comes to psychology, for me anyway, and others, I think, is that you can be off put by the language,
the complexity of
the language, and I this is only a hunch, but I think it's, some people do it on purpose to try and sound like they're really fancy, when it's like, when you're trying to communicate simple information, it's better to do it in a simple way. I find. Maybe that's not always possible when you're trying to describe psychological concepts and whatnot, but
that's what I really like about Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. You know, if you take Nudge, for example, it's a very, very accessible book. And it explains in a very, very accessible way kind of the basics of how particular conditions influence us. And it, you know, I one thing I actually really love, just going back to what you were saying about kind of the you know, the kind of the economic kind of explanations of behavior versus the behavioral economic, is the way that they nicely kind of differentiate between the econ and the human. You know, econs would never make this decision, you know, whereas humans do. And it's kind of really in a very accessible way trying to explain to people that what we should be doing is not always what we do, and in fact in a lot of cases we don't do that. You know, we don't save for mortgages, or we don't save for pensions.
Absolutely. So for anyone listening that hasn't read, that's Nudge, isn't it?
That's
Nudge. Nudge. So econs and humans. So humans are us, like handsome behavioral scientists like myself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that goes without saying. Yeah.
And econs would be people that have no emotions, I suppose, and are driven only by rational. Very rational thoughts. So I just want to see if I think an example of this kind of thing. So there's an economic game called the Dictator game, and it's a two-player game, and it's very simple. It's like player one has all the power, and so player one. So the game is, there's €100 at stake. There's player one and player two. Player one decides how to split the money, and they can split it any way they want, from zero, from them getting 100 to the other person getting 0, or they get 80 and the other person gets 20, and player two has no influence over the game whatsoever. So econs would go, well, I'm taking 100 and you're getting nothing because I'm in charge. And people think that, everyone would do that, because why wouldn't you? You'd look after yourself. But they see, after playing these repeated games over and over and over and over again, that's not what happens. The humans they go, oh, that's not really fair. Look, you take 30 and I take 70, or whatever it is. And I'm sure there's an average across it. So that's, and if you can extrapolate that to, I'm trying to think of an everyday example now and I can't, my mind's gone blank. But
do you remember that, that reminds me, do you remember that quiz show that was hosted by Jasper Carrott, the comedian? I think it was called like
This
Was
is
it?
brilliant.
It was called Goldenballs, was it?
It was, I think
Something
it was
like that.
called Goldenballs. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
exactly like
it
that
was
game.
fascinating to watch.
That's game
You know,
theory
the
at its
idea,
best. Yeah,
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 the
yeah.
idea that you could either, you know, if you say, for example, you win a jackpot of £15,000. It was a British show, so I'll go with pounds.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there was a number of different outcomes, but if you could either you had once you kind of accumulated the money, you had kind of two options. There was two players, and you had two options, and each player could either say put
Split or steal, I believe, were
split
the
or steal exactly. So if one player put in steal and the other player put in steal, so that in other words that they're looking to get all the jackpot, they both go away with no money whatsoever.
yes.
If one player or if they both put in split, they split the jackpot evenly. So
Yes.
say if it's 15 grand, they get 7.5 each. But what was interesting is that if one person put in steal and the other person put in split, then the person that put in steal got everything and the person that put in split got nothing. And
Mm.
each person had like I think it was like a 30 or 60-second pitch to the other person about what they were going to do.
It's amazing.
Oh, it was fascinating. And there was one or two episodes in particular where people completely overturned the predictable nature of these discussions. So I remember one episode where the person said, I am definitely going to steal.
That was the one, because he understood, because he goes,
Yeah.
look, whatever happens, I'm gonna steal. So look, if you hit steal, no one wins. So, and he says, I'm gonna hit steal and I'm gonna take all the money, but I'll split it with you afterwards. I
Yeah.
promise. And your
Yeah.
man's like, wasn't expecting. It's like he pushes him into a corner,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, make your move, and he has
Yeah.
to, and he's no other choice. He's like, well, if I
Yeah.
steal, I'm gonna lose.
But the guy was so convincing that he was going to steal. But of course, the punchline in the end was that he actually had given over the split.
Yeah. So at the
This,
end, when he said he was going to steal, the player two who was been pushed into the corner goes, "All right, split. You better give me that money." And your man goes, "Split as well," and they automatically split the money. And he's like, "Well, why did you do that?" It's like, "Well, it was the only way that I knew I could be
yeah,
guaranteed that we could both win, because
it was fascinating.
fascinating."
It was great to watch. But as you were saying, it kind of you can really see how that overlaps with what you were talking about.
Yeah. So we did. I think we actually watched that clip
Yeah.
in university, I think, because it's a really great explainer of how those things work. But one of my friends he did a paper on, it was more on unethical behavior, but it's when you get two players in a game that conspire together, that's when cheating goes through the roof. Because it's like, so you think about corruption, and like you look at all, like, corruption is like obviously rife throughout the world. Like, you hear all these stories like, oh look, there's another $100 million that was embezzled from here to here, or not paying their taxes, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's when people get together, because it's like, well, he's doing it, well, I may as well do it as well. Like,
You kind of you see that a little bit, I suppose, in relation to people's attitudes towards the environment and recycling behaviors, don't you? Like, I mean, the amount of people I've spoken to, and I've asked them, so do you recycle, or, do you go to the bottle bank and all these kind of things? And the amount of people, like, I won't say a large number of people, but a notable amount of people will say, but like, what is the point in me engaging in these environmentally friendly behaviors when you have countries around the world that are just doing so much damage to the environment, just tons and tons, and well, not even tons, but like so much damage. I mean, what is one person? How is my behavior going to somehow offset the tremendous kind of damage?
Yeah, and I would love to have a prepared answer for someone
Yeah.
if they come up with that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
I suppose the thing about it is that you see, various kind of instances over time where like one person doing something and then lobbying for change brings about mass change or brings about mass movements. So don't have to go much further than Greta
Of
Thunberg, and
course. Yeah.
whether people like, I know there's a number of people that have kind of concerns about the philosophy behind the movement or whatever, but my point is that one person doing a protest with very little exposure to the media or whatever creates a global movement,
Yeah, it's incredible.
and that is environmentally focused, so
Yeah.
it's a perfect example of how one person can make a difference. Yes, there still is this kind of maybe like environmental damage occurring, but it still is good evidence to show that these things are
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, there's a very interesting I'm going to try and do an analogy here for this. There's a very interesting video, and it's about it's a guy dancing on his own at a music festival, and he's in like it's at like the equivalent of Electric Picnic or one of those kind of festivals. It's in Europe somewhere, I don't know where, and he's just on his own, and everyone's just it's in way in the back, so everyone's just sitting down relaxing, and he's on his own and he starts doing all this cool crazy dancing, and everyone's kind of just looking at him, laughing at him, and then another person joins him, and then a third person joins him. Then there's three of them, and then it's like an avalanche of people all run to the same spot. It's like, look at he's laughing, he's stupid. Someone else goes in, maybe he's not. And then everyone wants to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's the same kind of snowball kind of effect.
Yeah. So I assume like I kind of think that's a really good example. Like you think of bystanders or people that are maybe afraid to take action in a particular situation.
Exactly.
And once that one person puts themselves forward to kind of to help or to join in or whatever, then you start it makes it kind of acceptable, socially acceptable. There's less social disapproval or perceived social disapproval to join.
Because if you're okay, first of all, if you're the idiot, they're on their own. There's one guy on their own. If you're a single a person on their own going, I'm not joining that crazy guy. He's on his own. But then it's like, there's two people up there. Is like, no, I'm not sure. But if there's three or four, it's a group. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I want to know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I suppose it becomes acceptable in the sense that we've been exposed to many times in our lives of groups of people dancing. Like if you go into whenever this actually occurs again, Ben, when people are actually able to dance in groups on a dance floor. I don't know when that'll ever happen again.
Yeah.
But if one person is dancing on their own, it's like people just kind of stay well away. But as soon as you have, because again, we have that, we're not usually exposed to one person dancing in a notably sized area. But when you have a few people, it's like that kind of typical, as soon as one person gets up to dance and then a couple of join, then everyone just fills the dance floor at things like weddings.
But that's the social thing. Like we've one of in persuasion psychology, one of the key principles is social proof. So that is that we look to others to I suppose validate our own behavior, or if we're going to do something. Do you ever? But you'll do it automatically. You'll notice if you're ever in a situation that's uncertain and you don't know what to do, you'll start looking around the room and going, what are they doing? Oh yeah, I'll just do that as well. Or if it's somewhere you're going to the gym for the first time, you don't know how to use the machines or something like that, or you're
very good example actually,
or whatever. That you just start looking around and go, copy that guy over there, or like it's that uncertain feeling.
Yeah.
And it's
Actually,
the same, sorry John, it's the same reason why like Facebook likes is social proof. Like, 10,000 people like that who have watched that video, it must be worth watching.
yeah.
But I suppose it's safety as well. Like, if you think about it, going back to evolutionary, I can never say that word,
Evolutionary.
evolutionarily, um, like safety in numbers. Like, when
Yeah,
you're, as the human race was developing, it's like, if you want to be
exactly.
safe, all those guys over there, they know what they're at. They're huddled together.
Yeah.
But there's some
It's
really interesting stuff. I don't know if
there.
we go
Oh
to
yeah.
today, but how the differences in social proof, because there's different types that
Yeah.
that can backfire, like
Yeah. I
in
I
certain
love
emotional
the
states.
going back to the idea of kind of noticing what other people are doing. There was a paper by Nolan, I think it was like 2008 or something, looked at normative messaging. Again, it's an environmental focused one.
What's normative
So
messaging? What's
it's
that mean?
basically the idea that people are, if people learn, or if people are made aware that everyone is engaging in a certain type of behavior, you're more likely to get involved. It was kind of similar, I suppose, to what you were talking about earlier in terms of social norms. But what Nolan did is wanted to look at the influence of messaging. So if people were given messages, or people were somehow was communicated to them, oh, you should get involved in recycling programs because everyone else is doing it.
Mm.
How influential would that be in comparison to, say, strategies, whereby you say to people, oh, you should do this because it helps the economy, or you should do this because it will save you money, or you should do this because it's important for the environment. And it was actually found that the idea that, like, that people would engage in these types of pro-environmental behaviors because everyone else was doing it, or it was understood that everyone else was doing it, had a larger effect than
Sure.
these other antecedent strategies.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes back to that idea that we can actually nudge people towards engaging in environmentally friendly behaviors, by kind of leading them to believe that they should be doing it because other people were doing it. Like, for example, I remember chatting to a student a few years ago. It was whenever the last big kind of snow storm or whatever happened
Mm.
in Ireland, and they were talking about how they went outside and they started to shovel the snow from their driveways, but they also started to shovel the snow from the path. And there's this, there's a certain, even though the path isn't part of your driveway or isn't part of your walkway, it is directly outside your house. So once one person started to do it, other people were less focused on just their driveway or their pathway, but started to do their own kind of bit of walkway outside their house, even though maybe it wasn't as required. But once they noticed other people were doing it, they joined in, and it kind of became like a social event.
Yeah. Like, hotels use that messaging for. I think there was actually a study done on this with this copy as well. It was like, so hotels obviously spend loads of money every year on cleaning towels, so that everyone gets a fresh towel
Oh,
every day. So they tried loads of different messages and said, oh, if you use your towel twice and hang it up, it'll help the environment. So all these different messages. And the message that people that worked the best was something like 79% of our hotel guests reuse their towel, something like that. And they go, oh well, if everyone else is doing it. And it's really interesting as well if you can do that in. Okay, let me try and explain this. If you can let people know at what stage of the hierarchy they are in a social group, and let them know where they are and what they need to do to progress in that social group to go up the hierarchy, that's how you get people to, that's really, it's really motivational for people. So I'll detail that. It's like, this is where you get into conspicuous consumption. And
Oh, okay.
why conspicuous consumption in layman's terms, in easy language, is why people buy stuff to make them look good.
Right. That's
So
interesting. Okay.
So like, it's why people buy Nike Air Max that can't really afford them. Do you know, like that? You like say the social group is your group of mates. You buy a new pair of Nikes so you can look cool and you can have lots. It's social. It's status. So you're trying to increase your status within a social group.
And does that translate well to other to many contexts?
Yeah. So if you think of it like, it's like looking at your neighbor. There's a really good paper called Keeping Up with the Joneses. I can't remember who wrote it. And it essentially shows that we... so there's a hierarchy, as I said, of levels of your social status. And you could do this, for example, with... Let me try and think of an example. Airlines do it. So think the social group is everyone who is a customer of that airline. And then you get frequent flyer miles and they tell you, you are in the gold circle. For just if, so it's like you are one of 20% of our customers in the gold circle. If you want to get to the platinum circle, where there's only 3% of our customers, you just need to spend X more money on these flights, and then you'll get into the gold circle, or the platinum circle, where you get all these extra benefits. So they go, I'm in this group of the 20%. I want to be in the 3% group because that's more exclusive. So I'm going to buy more flights or buy more whatever or spend more money so I can get into that exclusive group.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So and people go on.
No, you go ahead, because I have a something just social media related or media related to bring into that.
Well, there's a social media thing that. So there's a Facebook page called Pundit Arena. It's a sports.
Oh, I think I might have heard of it.
It's a sports. I think it might be just football, actually. Soccer.
Soccer, which is back tonight.
Yeah,
Premier League.
Yeah, I'm going to top body that into the score bag. Anyway, that's a bit on off. What was I talking about? I lost my train of thought now. Pundit Arena. I don't know if they know they're doing this, but they do these quizzes, right? So, and they go, there's 20 questions, and they say stuff like, the average, if you get above, they say stuff like, only 5% of people have got 20 out of 20 on this quiz. So you're already kind of going, if I know I get 20 out of 20, I'm in the 95th percentile of people.
Yeah.
But that encourages people to take the quiz because they know where they'll land. I got 16 out of 20. So that means I'm really high. And then they show that to all their mates, and you get this competition with people tagging each other. I got 17. And that's what's pushing people. It's because they can show their mates, I'm better than you at this thing.
It's that framing of the information. Yeah, because you see that with some kind of quizzes, is what they'll have some sort of tagline. Take the impossible football quiz. You're a genius if you get over 15. And it's like, you get over 15. It's like, I'm a genius, of course. It's that kind of frame. And as you were saying, I'm going to prove that I'm really knowledgeable, on football or whatever. But going back to what you were saying earlier, just reminds me of a very funny episode. One of my favorite comedy shows over the years was Frasier. And there was
brilliant show. Very well written.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
oh, brilliant. And there was this episode whereby they go into this very, very exclusive health spa,
Mm.
and there's different levels, like what you were saying, there's different kind of levels of status, I suppose, or whatever. So you could have I think they were on like the silver package or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two of them would look over and they'd see this door with like a, do not enter, whatever. And it would say like gold members room. And they would kind of look around and they'd sneak in, and then they're in the gold room and it looks so much nicer. And then they notice some fancy person coming in and she goes upstairs and it's into the platinum level.
Mm.
And then they sneak into the platinum level and it's even better. And then they see another door. Now, no one, I think maybe one person goes through the door, but but there's nothing written on it. It's like, oh, that's so exclusive because there's nothing written on it. So they just couldn't accept the level that they were at. So they walk through the door and it's the exit, and they end up in this alleyway. And it's like,
Be happy with what you have.
yeah, they just keep pushing and keep pushing. And it was a wonderful message of that kind of idea of social status. Like, could you imagine if someone's seen us in the diamond room or the platinum room? I wonder what's in there.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. So it's like, no matter what, like the guy that has two Ferraris in his driveway is still looking over the wall at his neighbor who's got three Ferraris.
Yeah.
Like it's
keeping up with the Joneses, as you said earlier.
Keeping up with, but that, exactly, keeping up with the Joneses. So they measured this. Oh, I can't remember exactly. So they measured this with something like garden shrubbery. So they measured this with so they took the neatness, the neatness and the loveliness of one's garden that the front garden that the neighbors could only see, and they measured it something like the number of really nice shrubs they had, something like that. I can't remember. And then it was the people that had more nice shrubbery, they were held in higher regard in the neighborhood.
Wow.
Something along the lines of that.
Well, in fairness, there's a part
of this that I'm missing, and I can't. There's a part of this that I'm missing, and I'd have to go and read the paper again, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's like but the reason that kind of lower socio-economic areas would still spend money on stuff that they can't really afford, like whatever, Nikes or whatever.
Yeah.
Is because you still compare yourself to the next social group. You don't compare yourself to people over there that have loads of whatever Porsches. You compare yourself to the next people up. Does that make sense? I don't think I'm explaining that very well, but
no, I get it completely. So like another interest, I suppose, an interesting question that leads from that is, are people making these choices to gain social approval, or are they making certain choices to avoid social disapproval? So
I don't
is
know
it
if
that
I think. Well, I suppose you'd have to define then if social approval and status are the same thing.
Yeah.
So let's, for argument's sake, let's say what you're describing, social approval is social status. I think it's to gain social status, because it's like,
I suppose in this case it's like you're gaining social status rather than
increase social status within the group you're in. But as I said, it doesn't just have to be a group of friends. That group could be an online community. That group could be all people that are customers of a certain. They could all be on an email list. You just need to let people know that they're in that group. Like if you get an email from whatever, some product or service that you're subscribed to, and they tell you based on your, let's say, that based on your engagement with the service or with the product, for example. And let's say it's an app, for example, and it has some function that you love and you use it every day, and you get an email from them and it says you are in the top 1% of people that use this app to engage. You're kind of going, wow, I'm a top customer of theirs.
Yeah.
So, and then maybe you get some sort of reward for staying in that tier. Tier is the word I was looking for, not hierarchy, but different tiers.
Yeah, tier 1, tier 2, yeah.
Different tiers would make more sense. And as I said before, if like you could be on the lower end of that and you could be not using this app at all, and you can get a message going, hey, if you just use it a bit more, you'd get these other benefits.
Yeah.
Really,
they do that.
Really works. It's really
they do that
yeah.
with certain kind of like as you know, we've chatted about it before. Like I would game a good bit. One of my hobbies will be video gaming, and one of the things that certain kind of, I suppose, gaming kind of shops or stores or whatever do is they have different tiers or different levels of membership. So if you're a level 1, for example, or a level 2, but there's a couple of ways that you can earn higher status or higher levels. So for example, level 3 allows you to, say, trade in games in ways that lower levels wouldn't be able to, and you get a certain percentage off new releases, when you go and pay for them, and when you trade games in, you get a little bit more in terms of value. But there's two ways that you in this particular place, there's two ways that you can get to level 3. You can either earn enough points through gaming and trade-ins and that sort of thing, or you can pay a kind of a certain amount of money so that you can automatically be moved up to level 3. So it allows kind of two options for you to gain higher status. You either pay or you are kind of engaging a lot in the directly kind of related behavior, which is an interesting kind of take in what you were talking about.
Now, we're going to just end here on this is going to be the end of part 1, because my signal is kind of breaking up a bit, so we might hang up this call.
Psychology, MisBehaviourists. Psychology, MisBehaviourists.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MisBehaviourists episode 1. It's kind of like part 2.3 at this stage. We did do part 2, but we forgot to press record. Well, when I say we,
to be honest, it was basically the Empire Strikes Back level part 2 of or the Godfather part 2. It was incredible. We talked about everything. We talked about spacecraft and
solved the world's problems.
Yeah, exactly.
But where were we, John, before?
I think what I was talking about was the different, you have certain department stores that kind of, going back to what you were saying about say things like social status, the different tiers, the different levels. There is one gaming related department store that I would be a member of, and they have different levels of membership, and you start off at level 1 usually and things like that. And one of the levels, which is quite interesting, is level 3. Now with level 3, you get access to a gaming magazine every month, and you also get a slightly higher value for your trade-in games and that sort of thing. But interestingly, there's two ways that you can actually get access to level 3. You can either accumulate enough tokens or points or credits by trading in and playing and buying games and things like that, or you can pay to automatically move to level 3. So there's like a yearly subscription that you can pay in order to. So that's kind of aimed at people that maybe want the benefits and the perks, but don't play enough to earn it through the actual gaming experience itself.
Well, so you can financially boost your social status.
Exactly.
You can
Which-
you can boost your social status by financial means within that social group
yeah,
as a
exactly.
means of, oh look, I've got all this stuff. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, look, I'm level 3, and no one
Yeah.
need be the wiser about why you're level 3, apart from the staff that are actually there that probably know.
Yeah.
But if you
And
come around flashing your level 3,
but flashing your badge, go look at me, lads.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Oh, look at me. I'm like,
because it could be that it could be that in one of those games that you can only progress to level whatever to tier 3 if you've completed or got to a certain stage in the game, which means
well,
that
yeah,
that's the bit that between the lads, between the group.
yeah. Well, that's the thing.
gonna-
It relates to video games as well as kind of buy-in games, just in the sense that you can, you like there are certain kind of, like, for example, there's certain games whereby you can earn your, say in FIFA, you can earn your status, I suppose, through grinding, as they would call it. So you're grinding for, say for example, in FIFA Ultimate Team, you're grinding for points, or for I can't remember what's called now, points or tokens or whatever, that you can cash in for benefits to your player or your team. But people can also buy a certain number of points that they could use to improve their team as well. So you can do it through grinding or earning as you go along, or you can do it through kind of fast track it a bit through actual payment. So you see it in video games as well, and it's not only like ones like FIFA, but there's other ways in which you can, instead of being kind of timed, whereby the number of lives you have, you only have a fixed number per hour or whatever, that you can pay extra in order to have more, so you can move further along or have a better status or whatever because of it.
How do you think? I saw an article recently, and I can't remember the details, but it was something. It might have been Fortnite, or it was some kids game that they had to take out an element of the game because the kids had to. It was a chance. They had to take a risk, and it was promoting. It was promoting gambling behavior because they had to take a risk on what the consequence was going to be.
So
there was micro,
something like a loot box, I wonder.
That sounds
like, I don't know if that's what it's called, but in Fortnite you do have skins or outfits or certain things that you can acquire along the way. Now, it doesn't improve the quality of your player as such, of your character.
It was something along the line. A loot box sound. Now I'm just looking at my phone.
But if you think about loot boxes, I suppose it is a kind of a chance that you get a very good weapon or a less good weapon, or something that is of higher value versus lower value.
Yeah, so Belgium has banned them. So it's just here. This
yes,
is just from the
yes, I had heard about Belgium's
a few people have banned them because I suppose it promotes. It introduces young people to gambling behavior.
Yeah, I think what it seems to come down to is the relationship between your behavior and the value of the outcome. So if I could be wrong about this, but if there's a chance that you, say, pay or you invest something of your own, and the value of the box could be substantially lower than the amount you put into it. I don't know if there's parameters, so they'll allow for being slightly lower or slightly higher. But if the loot box or whatever it is substantially, or can be substantially lower than the amount that you've invested, then I think it constitutes gambling. And
Because
countries
those
like Belgium really come down hard on that.
Yeah, because those loot boxes, for example, as you said, like you said in the gaming options for your tiers, you can play the game and you can get your tokens, points, whatever it is, or you can buy them. But I think that's the same in those loot boxes.
Yeah.
So you're buying something and then you're betting, you're taking a chance whether. So that's essentially gambling with micropayments.
Yeah, my understanding is that Belgium did the very same thing with FIFA.
Yeah. But if you extrapolate that to millions and millions of people playing this game that are kids betting money that they've invested on a massive scale. Whew.
Yeah.
That can get very. They're in Fortnite now, but what happens when Grand Theft Auto 6 or whatever it is comes out, and you can do that, and you can be yourself, and you can go into a casino and you can put a tenner in.
But with the kind of the microtransaction approach there.
Microtransactions, and then Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto just go, I'll just take a bit off the top of that.
I'm telling you, it's a growing trend. It's a growing trend. You're seeing more and more games going that way.
Like, could you give your behavioral science background, or that's the wrong word, using your behavioral science lens, look at gambling behaviors, and I suppose that'd be operant conditioning, wouldn't it? It's like when you pull the thing and then you get the
there's a kind of a set of contingencies or conditions in operant conditioning, the operant process, and they're referred to as schedules, or they're referred to as intermittent reinforcement. So the idea of this is that sometimes we'll engage in behaviors, or we'll behave a certain way, and we won't get a positive outcome every single time. So it's necessary for you to do something, but it's not sufficient to just do it once. There's other conditions in place that determine whether there'll be an outcome. So there's a number of different schedules, but the one that most closely resembles gambling would be variable ratio schedules of reinforcement. So I suppose the best way to explain variable ratio is to kind of break it down. Ratio is determined by, you get an outcome based on a number of times you do something. So that's like
sorry to cut across. So that's like
you're fine.
you get a bonus every month at the end of the month for work.
So
something
like that would be, I suppose, would be maybe on a fixed interval schedule. It's fixed in the sense that it's the same number of, or if it's in the case, instead of maybe using the time example, the interval example, just in terms of ratio, a fixed ratio would be every 10 outputs you get a bonus.
Not every time, but every number of
number of. So FR 10, or fixed ratio 10, would be every 10 times, or FR 20 would every 20 times. Variable ratio, however, constitutes, like within an experimental setting, what the way you would determine the number for variable schedules, I'll explain that first, is that firstly, variable ratios, you do something a certain number of times, but it's not a fixed number of times you have to do it to get a payout. So I might do something 6 times and get something, then it might be 20, then it might be 1, then it might be 17. And ratio determines that I have to do it a certain number of times before I get it. Now, in experimental settings, the way that we determine the numbers is an average. So for example, if I'm going to give 6 payments over 90 bets, for example, that would be, if you divide 6 into 90, you get 15. So on average, every 15 times you do something, you get a payout. But it's not going to happen that way. So it could be 6, then the next time it could be 20, then it could be 4. But if you add it all up and you get the average, then it works out as 15. But what's very, very powerful about that schedule is, I suppose, the potential distance between where you are now and the payout. You're always potentially only one more bet away from winning big.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't won big for the last 15 times, you're still potentially only one win away. And that's really powerful in gambling. If you look at that in terms of animal research, you see kind of very high rates of behavior. Say, for example, say a rat pressing a lever, you see very high rates of behavior over the medium to long term on these types of schedules. And when you translate this to gambling behavior, you see remarkable similarities in the patterns of behavior,
Yeah, it's
very high
scary, like.
rates of responding. It is scary. And then when you couple that with antecedents in gambling, you know, the removal of natural sunlight, the injection of oxygen into rooms, the
Free
access
booze.
to free booze, the access to free booze, all these things kind of, like, we do have certain antecedents available to us usually that kind of regulate our behavior. For example, sunlight. You know, if we notice that it's getting dark, it might increase the likelihood that we'll stop. But if we don't have clocks, if we don't have natural sunlight, if we don't have the natural outcome of doing something for a long period of time whereby we start to feel fatigued, you don't have those cues to be able to determine whether it's an appropriate time to stop. And it's
And
it's
you're
a very
getting-
powerful.
And you're getting, every time you win, you're probably getting some sort of chemical reaction. Is that
Yeah,
a
you're
dope?
getting
Is that
the
a dope? Is that dope? Is that a
Yeah,
dopamine?
like
Is that
there's
a
various
dopamine?
neurotransmitters. Yeah, well, various neurotransmitters would be involved. I would imagine, like serotonin, noradrenaline, dopamine. But yeah, so it's the and it's not. You see, the thing about it is it's all immediate. It's like when you win, when you're engaging in the behavior, when you win, you have the bright lights you have the colors of the roulette wheel, you have all this stimulation, and it's a very, very powerful process to grab yourself out of.
There's probably also, as we were talking about social status, there's probably a massive rise in social status for that moment when you
Yeah.
win, because
Yeah.
you're the winner. Then you're up the top.
Yeah.
But then that, as soon as somebody else wins, the next hand or the next thing or
Yeah.
whatever, throughout the
You need
roulette
to
or whatever,
you need to
like,
get back to that
you're
status.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what's so powerful. Like gambling is just such a, it's such a nasty, sinister thing. And it's and one thing, I suppose, from a psychological perspective, from a well-being perspective as well, is that unlike other types of addiction, you can lose everything in a second.
Yeah.
Other
Like,
kinds of
it's
addictions,
not like a continual
Yeah.
thing like alcohol or smoking or whatever.
yeah, like that's kind of like, I suppose, kind of, for want of a better term, kind of degradation, or kind of kind of disimproving over time. It usually takes a bit longer, but with something like gambling, it's just a split second and you lose potentially everything.
But then the gambler is like, yeah, but I was only a split second away from winning everything back as well.
Yeah.
Do you know, like,
Yeah. If
yeah,
you just
I
think
love
about it,
I,
just
I love playing poker now. I haven't played for a couple of years now, but I'm a big fan of playing poker.
Yeah. Well, that's
Poker's,
the thing. Like,
poker's
I mean,
slightly different because there is a huge element of skill in poker
there
as
is
well.
like, and funnily enough, it goes back to what you were talking about loss aversion. You know, the kind of the theory around loss aversion really plays in well to gambling, or sorry, plays in well to playing poker, because you have that you tend, you know, if you're starting to lose chips, you tend to maybe start betting smaller because you're losing a lot, and then you're making smaller bets, and when you're making smaller bets, then you're not going to win as big. And
yeah, but that's the difference when you need to be aggressive. When you
Yeah.
like, if you're short, if your stack is getting shorter and you're just calling, you're just slowly
Yeah.
getting. That's when you go,
Yeah.
no, all in, because then
Yeah.
you can double your money, or you just take the blinds. It's a great
Yeah.
game. It's a super game. Yeah.
But you are right in the sense that there is more kind of skill or strategy to it, but it still comes back to the idea that people will make decisions that cost them their livelihoods as well. Whereas, you know, there are kind of ways, like, I mean, I know some people are going to be like, oh, but it's not the same level of fun or the same level of kind of risk taking that I really enjoy. But if you're very, very clear about, you're paying in a certain amount and that's it. You know, it's not kind of a key, you know, that, what do they call it? Like, just thinking back to like James Bond or Ocean's 11 or these kind of things where it's like there's a certain payment and the casino whatever won't go beyond that under no circumstances. At least then there is a minimal amount you lose, but still it can be have a dreadful effect on people.
Yeah, sure. And I don't know an awful lot about addiction, to be honest. I know, but there's some people are is it genetically they'd be more predisposed to addictive? I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to.
Yeah, like I mean, I would imagine that there's some I suppose evolutionary psychologists out there that would probably argue that there may be some sort of kind of genetic component to it. Yeah. I'm not too sure myself because the area of addiction isn't something that that will be one of my kind of main research interests, but there's a large amount of research looking at addiction from various perspectives across various disciplines. So
I remember the psychoanalytic. From that lens, it was a lot about social. I know if I get this right, it was social exclusion. It's not social. Maybe not social exclusion is the right word, but it was the lack of social interaction with other people.
Interesting. Okay.
Can lead to the addiction replaces that social interaction. Something like that. I'd have to. It was Rick. It was Rick Lowson.
Yeah.
If you're out there,
he wrote. He wrote the subject of. Was it called The Subject of Addiction? His book. I think it was something like that. He wrote. I think he wrote.
To be honest, I'm only paraphrasing from what I can remember from one of his lecturers. Now it was something I'd have to look it up, but it was something to do with that. The addiction itself, whatever the draw is to, whether it's a substance or whether it's a behavior.
Yeah.
The draw is replacing something else that you're missing. It replaces. And it's like when people so if people are engaging in addictive behaviors, they're not engaging socially with other people.
Mm-hmm.
They're only going to the pub, or they're only going to.
Yeah.
They're not having meaningful interactions with other people.
Yeah.
I think it's some connection like that, and that's.
Well, that would make a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective as well. I mean, we are very, very social creatures, and
sure,
we would potentially do anything to try and fill kind of that gap. And we see the effect of loneliness, especially at the moment. We see the effect of loneliness on well-being, and how loneliness is a huge or lack of or more kind of social exposure to social situations is a huge kind of contributor to longevity,
sure,
longer, happier lives. So it would make complete sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, will we leave it there, John, for our part one?
I mean, we could keep talking,
two, but
this is part two. And yeah, I thought that was a nice talk today. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Next time, I'm gonna have a look at that framing.
Cool.
With the.
What I might do actually, just because I'd be genuinely interested in just looking up what we were just talking about there and seeing what the genetic predisposition to addiction would be, because it would be something I'd be quite interested in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for people watching out here, remember, we're behavioral scientists. I'm just going to speak for myself here. I don't claim to know much about everything. I know a bit about specific things that I'm able to apply to a load of different situations, but I'm certainly not going to sit here and try and blab on something I don't know. So I want to check out that genetic predisposition, though.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure. Well, this is the thing about psychology. Like, it depends what lens you have on. It depends which angle you're coming from.
It does. Yeah.
And that's what I really like, is that you can find from not necessarily competing theories, but from different coming from different directions, you can still see similarities of how they interact with each other, whether it's from a neurological point of view when you're talking about getting a dopamine hit.
Yeah. And Ben, that's what I love about behavioral science in general, that it's this kind of cross-disciplinary approach to explaining human behavior, that, you know, open-mindedness is so important, and we're able to learn from what neuroscientists have to say, what behavioral economists, neuromarketers, all these people that contribute to the area of behavioral science. I can learn. I mean, I find consumer psychology fascinating, but it wouldn't be one of my main areas of specialism. So I love learning about that. And that's what's great about behavioral science, is that you can bring a lot of like-minded individuals with clear kind of philosophies and goals together to talk and to develop our understanding of this.
Absolutely. And I think that's a fantastic place to leave us for today. For today. So thank you, everybody who has been listening. We plan to do this over the next while, over the coming weeks and months, I hope. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comment. We're not exactly sure what we're doing, where this is going to be yet, but we think it's going to be on LinkedIn and YouTube and maybe some other places as well. So if you have any questions, drop them in. And in the meantime, have a great week. And I should play you out with our wonderful tune. Enjoy.
That'll get stuck in your head.
Psychology.